Okay, guys. Partial fraction decomposition. This was in, I think, section 7.3, was it? We did not get to test or quiz over it, so we're going to have a little quiz on Monday over just the stuff we're doing right now. And this is a review because we've seen it before. So you're going to have a couple problems where you have to just set up the partial fraction decomposition, and then a couple where you actually have to solve. So let's go through. Let's remind ourselves what this looks like. Okay, first of all, I think on your notes there was a 7. Should have been a 9. So change number 1 should say x squared plus 9x minus 70. Now, when we're setting up our partial fraction, we do not solve. It says do not solve. You just use A, B, C, capital letters for your numerators. And however many different denominators you have, that's how many fractions you have. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to factor your denominator. Are there factors of negative 70? That'll multiply to give me negative 70, but add to give me 9. So x plus 14 and x minus 5. Now, if we were going to solve this, remember we would set each of those equal to 0 and plug those in. But we're not going to. We're just setting this up. So how many different factors are in the denominator? 2. So I have x plus 14 and I have x minus 5. Does it matter which one you put first, which one you put second? No. So I have A here, B here. That's all you have to do. When you're setting it up and not solving, all you're doing is factoring the denominator and then setting up your progression. All right, so I look at the next one and I say, okay, factor the denominator. What can I take out of 3x cubed minus 27x? 3x. I can take out a 3x. So when I do, that leaves me with x squared minus 9, correct? Is that fully factored? No. So this becomes 3x times what? X plus 3, x minus 3, or minus 3 plus 3? So how many different factors do I have? 3. So how many fractions will I have set up? There you go. So I have 3x, x plus 3, and x minus 3. Does it have to be in that order? No. That's just how I wrote it. So you have A, we have B, and we have C. Make sense? All right, let's look at 3. What do you guys notice about 3?
It's a long.
It's a long one? That's what we said? What else do you notice about 3?
There's 3.
What can I take out of all 3 of these?
Negative 2.
-2 what?
X.
Okay, so if I divide everything, but I'm going to take out a negative 2x. I like that you guys said negative. If we leave with a negative, take it out. So divide by negative 2x, negative 2x, negative 2x. Good. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 gives me
3x squared.
I don't know why I wrote it like that. We took out negative 2x. Okay, it leaves me with 3x squared. Negative 22 divided by negative 2 is plus 11, right? 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. Everybody agree? All right, now I have to factor this more, can I?
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to say negative 2x, and I'm going to multiply A times C. I get negative 12. What are the factors of negative 12 that multiply to give me a negative 12 but add to give me 11?
12 and negative 1.
X plus 12 and x minus 1. My A term, guys, remember, is not 1. So what do I do with that? I divide both of these factors by that. Good. So I'm left with negative 2x. Then I have x plus 4. And then this doesn't simplify pretty, so this becomes 3x minus 1. Agreed? How many different factors do we have in the denominator? 3. So I'm going to have how many fractions? There you go. All right, this is going to be quiz number 1 for the 4th quarter. So make sure, guys, that we start off with a bang, and a good bang, not a bad one. So 3x minus 1. And then what goes in my numerators? A, B, and C. Good. This one was not on yours, so go ahead and write it. It's 3.5. I just plugged it in there. All right, how's this one a little bit different? You have to repeat it, right? This is the same as x plus 3, x plus 3, and x plus 3, correct? All right, so how we did this, when we talked about this weeks ago, whenever we did this, right? I have x plus 3 is my first denominator. What is my second denominator? Good, x plus 3 squared. And then what's the third one? X plus 3 cubed. If this was to the fourth power, what would my fourth denominator be? X plus 3 to the fourth. Good. So I have A, I have B, and I have C. So do you guys have any questions on the problems where all you're doing is setting up? You do not have to solve. We okay? All right, let's do these two examples. Again, now we're not only going to set it up, we're actually going to solve it. These are a little lengthy, but that's okay. We all can do this, no problem. Our first step is to do what? Factor the denominator. Is there a GCF? Is there a letter and or a number that I can take out of this denominator? I'm going to take out a -1, right? If we're going to have to factor, I'm going to take out -1. So take out that -1, and this becomes 3x squared minus 13x plus 14. Agreed? Is that -1 going to be a denominator of itself when we set up our partial fraction decomposition?
No.
Why not?
Because it would be like.
Does -1 equal 0? No. Is there an x with it? No. Good job. We're just trying to make our numbers prettier. So let's factor this. I'm going to say A times C. So 3 times 14 is 42. What are the factors of 42 that multiply to give me 42 but add to give me 13?
-7, -6.
X minus 7 and x minus 6. Could be the other way. Doesn't matter. But just make sure they're both minus. Now, remember, guys, your A term is not 1, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So I'm left with 3x minus 7 and x minus 2, correct? Okay, good. Now, I'm going to go ahead real quick. This is where we set up our partial fraction decomposition. But let's just go one step further and figure out what values we're going to plug in for x. What am I plugging in for x when I work out my partial fraction decomposition?
+7 and x, no, 2.
Okay, so +2 and then 7 over 3. All right, you guys agree with that? If I have 3x minus 7 equals 0, we move 7 to the other side, it becomes positive, and then we divide by 3, right? Okay, so let's set up our problem. One of my denominators is 3x minus 7, and the other one is x minus 2. Doesn't matter. You could put x minus 2 first. That's fine. So I have A here, and I have B here. Does anybody remember what we do next?
The reciprocal. You multiply x minus 2 to the.
Correct. I know what you're trying to say. You look at your first fraction. It has 3x minus 7. What's it missing? X minus 2. Good. Your second fraction has x minus 2. What's it missing? 3x minus 7. You now have an equivalent equation that you can write down and solve. So I'm going to rewrite this as -x plus 7 equals A times x minus 2 plus B times 3x minus 7. Now, some of you are like, wait a second. We have to evaluate with a fraction? Yes, that's okay. We're going to evaluate with 7 over 3 and see what happens. And we're going to evaluate with x equals 2. Everybody remember this? Okay, so let's plug in. I'm going to say -7 over 3 plus 7 equals, we have A times 7 over 3 minus 2 plus B times 3 times 7 over 3 minus 7. Does anybody remember what should happen with one of my variables? One of them should cancel out, correct. If you did it wrong, then you will see that one of them does not cancel out. So when we go through here, okay, I see fractions. That's okay. I see a fraction, though, that is not a terminating decimal. Something divided by 3 is going to give me that 0.3333, 0.6666. So we have to keep it as a fraction. So the first thing I'm going to do is change 7 over 1 to thirds. What would it be? 21 over 3. Good. So if I have -7 plus 21, what does that give me? 14. Yep, so 14 over 3, great, equals, all right, 7 thirds minus 2. Well, what does 2 become?
8.
Not 8. 6 over what? 6 over 3, correct? Okay, good. So if I have 7 minus 6, what does that give me? 1/3. So I have 1/3 A plus, well, what happens over here? 3's cancel, and then 7 minus 7 is, there we go. Now, guys, don't get hung up on this. This is just going back to like 9th grade algebra. I have 1/3 times A. What's the opposite of times 1/3? Okay, so look, I'm going to divide both sides by 1/3, right? I divide by 1/3. You guys agree? Well, when you divide by 1/3, you're what? You keep change flips. So let's go over here and say 14 over 3. Keep. Change this to multiplication, and I flip 1/3 becomes 3 over what? 3 over 1? Okay, so what does A equal? A equals 14. Perfect. Perfect. Now I'm going to scoot on over here, and I'm going to do the exact same thing, but instead of plugging in 7/3, what am I going to plug in? 2. So, all right, I have -2 plus 7 equals A times 2 minus 2 plus B times 3 times 2 minus 7. Do we like to do this when there's whole numbers? Yeah. All right, left-hand side. What's -2 plus 7? 5 equals, what's 2 minus 2? 0, and then 0 times A just cancels out. Good. Do we want one of our variables to cancel out? Yep, so we're good. All right, over here I have 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 minus 7 is -1. So I have -1B, correct?
Yeah.
Now what do? Divide both sides by -1. So what is your B value? -5. All right, am I done? No. My final answer needs to be written with my A and my B plugged into that first step. So there's a couple ways you could write this. You could write this as 14 over 3x minus 7 plus -5 over x minus 2. If you had x minus 2 first, that's fine, but -5 needs to be with that. Another way I could write this, guys, if you wanted to, you could say, whoa, that says or, 14 over 3x minus 7 minus 5 over x minus 2. You don't like the plus and negative, that's fine. Either one of those is fine. Questions? All right, same exact thing, it's just a little longer, and you'll see why it's a little longer here in a second. First thing we have to do is factor what? All right, this one's a tad bit longer. It's a tad longer because you have more stuff going on in the denominator. But let's factor the denominator. So this becomes, I can take out an x, right? And then I'm left with x squared minus 100. Well, what does that break down to? X times x plus 10 and x minus 10. How is this denominator a little different than the first one we had? There's an x instead of a 1. Good. Is that now is that its own denominator? Yes. So when we go to set this up, I have 3 fractions that I have to deal with. This just makes our algebra a little longer as we're working it out. But I have x plus 10, and I have x minus 10. So I have A, I have B, and I have C. So now we go through setting up our equation. So my first fraction has the x. What are the 2 pieces that it's missing? X plus 10 and x minus 10. You can leave them just like that. You don't have to multiply them together. If you want to, you can, but you don't have to. My second fraction, B, it has x plus 10. What are the 2 pieces it's missing? Good, x and x minus 10. Perfect. And then C has x minus 10. What's it missing? X and x plus 10. Perfect. So now we just take this big old thing. We set it equal to each other, right? So we have 17x minus 12 equals A times x plus 10, x minus 10, plus B times x minus 10, plus c times x and x plus 10. Now, how many times are we going to have to evaluate that equation? 3, because I have 3 pieces in my denominator. Do we know yet what numbers we're going to plug in? What do we do with each piece of that denominator? Set it equal to? So I'm going to use x equals 0, x equals negative 10, and x equals positive 10. You guys with me? Okay, perfect. I'm going to go just in that order, just because I want to. So the first thing I'm going to do is evaluate where x equals 0. So I'm going to say 17 times 0 minus 12 equals a times 0 plus 10 times 0 minus 10, right? Plus b times 0 times 0 minus 10 plus c times 0 times 0 plus 10. Questions on how I just filled everything in? This looks like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this whole big problem. It's not bad, guys. When we simplify, what's 17 times 0? 0. So I have negative 12 equals, what's 0 plus 10? 10 times, what's 0 minus 10? Negative 10, good. So what's negative 10 times 10? Negative 100. So I have negative 100a. Agreed? Now what happens with b? It does, because this is negative 10, right? Well, what's 0 times negative 10? Oh, 0. Right here, this is 0 plus 10, so this is 10. What's 0 times positive 10? 0. So all we have right here, guys, is this. How do I solve this? You divide both sides by negative 100, correct? Negative 100. So I have a equals. Does this simplify nice and pretty? No. Can we simplify this fraction?
Yeah.
Yes. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. And then what number goes into both 12 and 100? Bigger. 4, right? So this works out to 3 over 25. Perfect. That's fine. And we'll talk about what we do with our fraction here in a second. So now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to plug in what number? Negative 10. If you want to plug in positive 10 at this step, that's fine. I'm just going to plug in negative. So I have 17 times negative 10 minus 12 equals a, which is negative 10, plus 10 times negative 10 minus 10, right? Plus b, which is negative 10, what? Times negative 10 minus 10. And then c plus c is going to be negative 10 times negative 10 plus 10. Again, looks like, what a problem. It's really not that big of a deal. What is 17 times negative 10? Negative 170. So I have negative 170 minus 12 gives me negative 182. Okay, fine. Equals. Guys, what's negative 10 plus 10? This is 0, and then this is negative 20. Well, what's 0 times negative 20? 0, so that crosses out. Okay, come over here. This is negative 10, agreed? Yes? Okay, and then what's negative 10 minus 10? Negative 20. So what's negative 10 times negative 20? Positive 200, so I have 200b. And then what happens over here at the very end? It cancels because negative 10 plus 10 is 0, and then 0 times negative 10. So exactly what we needed to happen happened, right? 2 of our 3 variables canceled out. So now I just simplify. How do I get b all by itself? You're going to divide by 200. Now, this isn't pretty, so I'm just going to simplify. What number goes into both negative 182 and 200? 2. So I get negative 91 over 100. Again, it's a fraction. No big deal. So now we're going to do this problem another time. And this time, what are we going to plug in? We're going to plug in positive 10 or negative 10? Positive? Okay. So I have 17 times positive 10 minus 12 equals A times 10 plus 10 times 10 minus 10, right? Correct? Then I have plus B times 10 times negative 10, what is it? 10 minus 10? Okay. And then I have plus C, which is 10 times 10 plus 10. Agreed? You guys with me? Right? Isn't the last one 10 plus 10? Yep. Okay, so now we just simplify. What's 17 times 10? 170. Now I have 170 minus 12 gives me 158. Good. Equals, all right? This should be quick. 10 plus 10 is 20, but 10 minus 10 is 0. 20 times 0 is 0. Cancels. Here I have 10 times 10 minus 10 is 0. What happens here? Cancels. Here I have 10 times, what's 20 plus 10? Sorry, 10 plus 10 is 20. So 20 times 10 is 200C. Now what do I do? Divide by 200. Again, not a beautiful fraction, so what do? Just simplify it. What can I divide 158 and 200 by? 2. How many times does 2 go into 158? This is 79, and this is 100. Does 79 break down anymore? Okay, so 79 over 100. Now, that is a long problem. Seems like it took us forever, but we still have not even gotten to the answer. I go back to my original. What is your A value? What did you find out A equals? 3 over 25? So how do I write that?
The denominator is 25.
I have 3 over 25 over X, right? Plus, what was our B? Negative 91 over 100 over what? X plus 10. Okay. Then I have plus 79 over 100 over X minus 10. All right. If you leave it like this, you are not getting full credit. Where should all of our denominators in our numerator, where should the denominators go? They should go to the bottom. This should come here. This should come here. This should come here. You do not have to distribute. You can just leave it as 3 over 25x. Again, you can say plus a negative or just minus. You can say 91, not 911, 91 over 100 times x plus 10. If you want to distribute, you can, but you don't have to. And then I have plus 79 on top, and then I have 100 on the bottom, and x minus 10. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your partial fraction decomposition of that problem. Kind of long? Yes. But incredibly hard or anything? No. You just got to be really careful with your algebra. Sometimes it's a little harder on the iPad because, you know, as on explain everything, I'm going in and out and that sort of a thing. But you will have 5 questions on your quiz. 2 or 3 where you just set up, and then 2 or 3 where you have to solve. So make sure we know how to do that.